Good morning. Welcome to the Science of Mind class. I'm Dr. Petra, and love being with you here with you guys. We are continuing on with our conversation about mental equivalence. Mental equivalence, a fabulous chapter. So there's a couple of pieces now in these next couple of paragraphs that are actually really important in terms of not so much the construction of the mental equivalent, but the act of being present to our mental equivalent and allowing the manifestation to happen. So the second full paragraph, never let anything cause you to doubt your ability to demonstrate the truth. Conceive of your word as being the thing. See the desire as an already accomplished fact and rest in perfect confidence, peace, and certainty, never looking for results, never wondering, never becoming anxious, never being hurried or worried. And so the idea of our mental equivalent is that it's always the end result, whether that end result is something we think will happen tomorrow or 10 years from now. It's always the end result. And that takes some time. That takes some time to experience and embody the end result. Again, this does not mean we have to visualize all the details. We don't have to visualize, let's say we want to live someplace else, or we want to have different kind of work, or we decide we want to go back to school, or maybe we want to have a family, or we want to be in a relationship, right? It's about what does it feel like? What's the sense of it? If some images come, great, but the images themselves are not required. What's required is a sense of already having it to the best of our ability. We keep working on having that, which means internally we become a person who already has it. Okay, so this is and this is the piece of creating the mental equivalent. Now, the next thing is to recognize this idea that this is the next paragraph. Cosmic creation is from idea to object. It does not know anything about process. Process is involved in it, but not consciously. Correct practice should know the ultimate right action is now today. If we say tomorrow it is going to happen, then according to the very law we are using, we hold the answer in a state of futurity. There's a good word, futurity, which can never become present. So it's not that it will happen. Of course, we know in the space-time continuum there is process and unfolding, which we're going to talk about in a minute. But in our mental equivalent, it's the already having received embodied experience, the already having received the good, and being that as an internal experience. Now, is this easy? Not necessarily, right? That's what so much of our spiritual work is about. How is it that we can do this? How is it that we can believe it, right? All of that is based on our understanding of the nature of reality, of who we are, and it really invites us to fully embrace looking for the good and having gratitude for it. Because if we've had good in our life in the past, we can experience that sense of gratitude, and we can actually transfer that experience of gratitude and having to this thing that we only have in consciousness, that we don't yet actually have in the physical world, but we have it in consciousness. That's the work that we have to do, having it in consciousness. And that might be a process, right? We might have to run up to it, and then we forget, and then we run up to it again, right? And so we want to pay attention to anytime we're wanting something, anytime we're thinking about it will happen someday, these are the things that are going to come about. We're holding all of that in the future. A state of futurity which can never become present. That would be like saying a gardener is holding the seed in his hand and, I'll plant it tomorrow. So the plant doesn't even have an opportunity to grow until the seed is planted, right? And so this is powerful work, and we continue to do that work in our spiritual time. We don't really, I wouldn't say we meditate on it so much as we contemplate the experience of already having. Jesus said, when you pray, believe that you have and you shall receive. He did not say believe and you will immediately have. He said, and you shall receive. He did not deny the natural law of evolution and growth. Nature operates according to a law of logical sequence. So then this is the other piece, right? This is the dichotomy. This is the, I'm a spiritual being having a human experience. I'm someone who has a mental equivalent of having while I am in the process of experiencing it becoming in the world. This is a highly, what shall we say? This is something we really have to practice. We have to practice having something in consciousness that we don't yet see. And of course, it's the very opposite of, well, believe it when I say it. No, I'll believe it when I see it. And we're raised with that, right? That's our fact-based, science-based mentality, thanks to the Enlightenment, which has given us a lot of great good, and the scientific revolution and all of that's given us a lot of great good, no question about it. But it has turned us into people who will only believe things that we can see. And yet, the truth is, we're going to see it because we believe it. Not like we believe in something, but we have embodied the reality of it within our consciousness, that we are a person who has this. And now we simply have to allow it to grow, to unfold. And I think this is something that we forget in our work with mental equivalence. We're not talking about instant demonstrations here, instant manifestations, right? We have instant manifestations of we need a specific amount of money, or we need a specific healing, right? We have instant demonstrations because we want to attract a parking place, or, you know, or a job, we might even. But there are many things that we want to experience in our lives which have to do with growing things. We want to grow our education. We want to grow our family. We want to grow our engagement in civic society. We want to grow our awareness of the environment, right? All of these things are not things that we instantly demonstrate. They're consciousness that we plant, they're ideas that we plant in our own consciousness, and then there is a logical and natural progression of that to unfold during the space-time continuum. And sometimes we become impatient, sometimes we become unreasonable in how it's supposed to happen, right? And remember, the process isn't our job. We don't stand over a plant and say, okay, now make sure you put that leaf out, and oh, don't forget to bud, and why do you have buds over here? Shouldn't they be over here? We don't do any of that. We plant the seed, and we allow the plant to do its own thing to grow. We might prune, we might fertilize, we might do some things, but we don't actually stand there and tell the plant what it should be doing next. This is our allowing that law of growth to unfold and really trusting that. We have to trust the outer process because we know the inner reality. This might be, besides paying attention to our self-talk, this might be the single most important spiritual practice. More important than meditating and doing spiritual mind treatment, any of that. The most important, this might be one of our most important spiritual practices. The ability to have a consciousness about something that has not yet manifested in the space-time continuum, in the physical reality in some form or fashion. When we are able to do that, when we keep working with it and make it more and more real and more real, and we're actually kind of surprised that it hasn't yet unfolded, not like in an upset or angry way, but just, yeah, where is it? Okay, I'm waiting. I'm seeing the process. I'm seeing it unfold, right? Then we can move on to this last piece I want to talk about, that he goes on to talk about perfect action, no mistakes, right? That we actually have to move with perfect assurance. Having done this, right, that there's an intelligence which governs, guides, and guards, tells me what to do, what to act, and how to act. We have to recognize that that's part of this unfolding, this law of growth. Having done this, in perfect faith, we act in assurance. So one of my favorite examples of this really is, let's say you decide to go back to school, and you have a bachelor's degree, you decide you're going to go get a PhD. Well, it is going to take time in the space-time continuum to get a PhD. But if the consciousness that we've held is, I now have a PhD in this particular subject matter, now all of the classes, all of the research, all of the writing of the dissertation, all of that we still have to do, but we do it with confidence and assurance. We're not approaching the classes going, oh, I hope I can do this. Oh, I hope it's not too hard. Oh, I just don't know. We approach our writing our dissertation with the expectation that we'll learn how to write it, that we'll get better at it as we work at it, as opposed to, oh my God, this is just so hard, and why did I ever say that, oh, I just don't know if I can do it. Do you see? It's not that we don't have to go through the steps. It's that because the outcome is assured, because we're owning the outcome as the truth of our experience, we can walk through the process with confidence. And of course, what that does is it reduces the stress. It allows us to be more awake to intuition. It allows us to see the paths more clearly. It allows us to run into a closed door and not get wigged out and go, well, okay, well, I thought it was that way, but clearly that's not working out. So there must be another avenue. There must be another way that I can move through this experience. And all of that becomes just part of the process because we've owned the end result internally. Thomas Troward calls this the law of growth. Here in the mental equivalence, it's the nature operates according to a law of logical sequence. Now, we might find that the logical sequence is much shorter. There might be a big surprise about how quickly it happened or how effortlessly it happened. We could be surprised about some of the twists and turns or very unexpected changes or help that we received along the way because we weren't obsessing about the process. We just were walking the process through to the end result that we have embodied. Now, we can do this with anything, with health, with relationship, with work, with culture, with healing with our planet, moving through and coming out on the other side of all the environmental crises. All of that. We can do it at any level. And we can, this is what Ernest Holmes means when he says, any demonstration, any manifestation requires our mental and spiritual coin. Mental and spiritual coin. It is the amount of attention, intention, focus, and awareness that we spend on, am I staying true to my mental equivalent that I already have this? Am I trusting the process? Have I now forgotten? Do I have to do that work again? Do I have to be assured about my, right? We're paying attention to actually where we are. And we're spending our mental and spiritual coin, meaning we're spending the energy, the mental and spiritual energy in our awareness, attention, focus, those kinds of things. And this, as I said, this might be one of the most significant and challenging spiritual practices we have. So many of you have heard me use this example. It's a little bit like people who they either get their glasses or LASIK surgery or whatever, and they have one eye for reading and one eye for distance vision, right? And so you learn to flip back and forth, right? You learn to look at out of one eye that, oh, this is the eye I'm reading with, oh, that's the eye I'm looking out into the world with. And and that's a skill that has to be learned, right? The brain has to stop having binocular vision. It now has to learn to have monovision, and we are in charge of teaching our brains how to do that. This is exactly what we're doing with mental equivalent and process. Mental equivalent and the law of growth, right? Our mental equivalent, actually I would say mental equivalent, right, is the outcome. That's the spiritual view that we have of certainty for the outcome. And then we have one eye on the process. Okay, so I'm listening, I'm guided by intelligence, I'm going to move with assurance, I'm going to decide to go this direction. I don't know that it's actually the best thing, but it seems like the best thing at the moment, and I'm going to follow the law of growth, and I'm going to move in the direction because I know this outcome, I already have it. I already have it in consciousness. And so we're playing with these two views of our life, right? The view, the experience of having, and the experience of being in process. And that's what it means to be a spiritual being having a human experience. And these two things play together. And it seems to me that we have a tendency to want it to be all one way or all the other. We're going to be all spiritual, and therefore everything's going to instantly demonstrate, boop, 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 boop. Or we're going to really work with our human point of view, which says, well, I'll believe it when I see it. I don't really know. I don't know. And I'm not going to get too crazy about thinking it's actually going to happen, right? Because, of course, so this is the dance of the having and then the becoming, right? Being and becoming. I'm being that person who has that experience that is my mental equivalent, but I'm also in the process of becoming that. Everything in Science of Mind resolves itself into a paradox, both and, having and becoming, being and doing. We'll never just be being because we're embodied. We're embodied incarnated souls in the space-time continuum. So we're never going to just be. What we don't want to do is just do. We have to be and do, I don't want to say simultaneously, but in that perfect dance of being and doing, of directing and receiving. All of these things are the paradox of the both and. So I want to have my mental equivalent as the consciousness that I am as I become it in the world, and walk with confidence and assurance through all of the changes that are part of the law of growth. So, this is how we live our mental equivalent, not just how we create a mental equivalent, but then how we live the mental equivalent into being, or into becoming, we should say. This is why metaphysicians are very wordy, because you have to be very careful about your words, otherwise we're not clear about what we're talking about. So we're going to stop there and just ask the question, what's confusing about this? Or what's challenging about this? Where do you find the challenge? And let's see if we can't tease apart some ways to make this either a little easier or a little more obvious, or just talk about how do we overcome the challenge that this sort of very paradoxical way of being in the world is. So we're going to check in with Ryan and let him say good morning and see what kind of comments or questions we have. So good morning, Ryan.
Good morning, Petra, and good morning to everybody who is watching us out here on the Zoom and Facebook Live. And this is funny because as you were talking about that, last week we brought up a song, and one of the choruses to the song was, "Get my little self out the way."
Right.
Get my little self out the
That's
way.
Right.
But I was thinking another part we could add is doobie doobie.
That's
doobie,
right.
Doobie doobie. Right?
See, they did know it in the 60s. I think that's exactly right. Doobie doo, doobie doo, doobie 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 doo.
They were brainwashing you and you didn't even know it. Wow.
Yep.
All right. Well, now is the time that we want to hear from you. This is the engagement portion of our activity. And so there's a couple ways that you could do that. If you'd like to, in the Zoom room, raise your hand, or you could always put your questions and comments within the Q&A or comments section. And if you're watching us on Facebook Live, we'd love to hear from you too. Please put your questions or comments inside of the comments, and we'll bring them here inside of the room. And once again, if you'd like to join us, you can always hop over to the Zoom meeting by hitting the link in the description above. So it looks like we have somebody, one of my favorite folks, Dennis. Dennis, do you want to go ahead and unmute yourself?
Hi, Dennis. Good morning.
Good morning, good morning. Hey, I just wanted to, I guess, I'm trying to say this so I don't do it quickly. Okay, going back a few weeks when I explained my little story about my flower bed. And how, it amazed me how after nearly 10 years of practicing science of mind, I still did not fully understand mental equivalent, what it truly is. Okay, so I told my little story. My question was, well, then why did it turn out better than I anticipated? You said, the first thing you said was, well, mental equivalent has nothing to do with form. Okay, so then just simply from the story I told you, you're rattling off, you just knew, okay, you have a strong mental equivalent of this, you have a strong mental equivalent of that, you have a very strong mental equivalent here. And so over the last couple of weeks, now and then I've thought about it, and I'm like, whoa. Okay, and you mentioned it this morning, really. Okay, it's very important. I have discovered it's very important to hold a desired outcome with no doubt.
Yeah.
And so I guess what has happened from me doing this in different areas, doing that, holding that desired outcome without any doubt, has automatically built my mental equivalence in different areas.
Yes, yes. And fundamentally, your mental equivalent is that you know how to create, right? And that it works for you. What a fabulous mental equivalent to have. And it's completely transferable from any activity, whether it's I'm going to create a garden, or I am going to learn how to play an instrument, or I'm going to go find a different kind of work, or really anything. Because the fundamental mental equivalence we want to have is the mental equivalent that we are a spiritual being, that we are co-creating, that the universe does say yes. These are things that we don't want to just believe. It's not about so much believing in it as it is we are the kind of being who knows this about themselves, right? And that's exactly what we talked about, and you're exactly right. And then the good news is when we confront something that's seems very brand new to us or very scary. Let's say we're going to completely reimagine our life. We're going to completely reimagine our career. We're going to completely reimagine what we're focusing on in life. These are things that can be very scary. And yet if we have a history of showing ourselves that we have a mental equivalent, that we're co-creative, that's completely now transferable to these aspects of our life that we're working on that might be a little scary. And we can borrow our experience and bring it right into the particular thing we're working on. So thanks so much for sharing that, Dennis, right? It's really important because a mental equivalent is not a visualization. Truthfully, it's not a vision either, although it may include images. But it's about being a person who has a certain kind of experience or life. Remember, the first two things we talked about was the size, the quality, and then the ability to express and experience is what defines a mental equivalent. It's not necessarily the form, this particular job, that particular home, that particular type of thing, right? It's really about the experience that we're having of it. So beautiful. Thanks, Dennis. Thanks for bringing that up and sharing with us. All right, Ryan.
Yes, Thank you for sharing. And now is your time to share along with us. So put your questions or comments inside of the comment field so we can hear from you. And so one of the questions that did come up, it asks, how do you create a desire for life and living when you don't know how? How do you know what you want to manifest?
Yeah, that's a great question, and so this is where I think you have to start playing. I think we spend altogether too much time on passion and purpose like it's some golden ticket. Like there's only one passion you might have in your life. You have one purpose, and the purpose is to be you. To be you and express your life and to experience it to its fullness, right? That's the purpose. Anything beyond that is something that you decide you are interested in, you want to experience, you want to express. And so a really powerful way to do that is to begin exploring, to just begin playing around with it. So there's a beautiful practice that you can do, and I don't know whether it has any kind of a name, but I think of it as the funnel or the diamond practice. I have often suffered in my own life about not knowing what I want because I am a dutiful, responsible person and I do what's expected of me and what I'm supposed to be doing. And so I have often struggled with, well, what do I want? What do I want? And so you can work with this process by basically giving yourself permission to explore, to experiment, and to play. So you can do this in a journal, you can do this in your mind. It always helps to write it down or to work with it in some visual way. So the first thing you do is you make a funnel that goes from a point out into, what is that? That's the less than sign, right? Into an opening. And you begin to imagine filling that funnel with things that you might want to do or experience. You could go back to school, you could get a different kind of career, you could decide that you want to follow some art thing that you used to love as a kid. Lots of people say, look at the kinds of things you loved doing as a kid, as long as it's not just play, because we're here to express and to experience life, and we are most satisfied when we are challenged in some way that really causes us to grow. And so start playing around with it. And you can just fill in this funnel with ideas, right? You don't have to do anything about it. Just give yourself a month, 3 months, even 6 months to fill in ideas, things you've said or thought. Oh, I'd like to travel around the world. Oh, I've always wanted to be an, oceanographer. Oh, I've always wanted blah, 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 right? Right. Okay, so then you have this funnel and you've filled it up with ideas. All right, so then for however long you're going to give yourself to play around with that. And I do mean explore. So then you're gonna sit down. I usually suggest that people take a month period of time, and you're gonna start examining everything that you've put in this funnel. You're not gonna examine for logistics or possibility or any of those things. What you're gonna do is you're gonna examine them for the inner response of, yeah. That would really be amazing. I would like to do that. And or you might use it the other way. You can sense into, well, if I just let that go, would I be okay with it? Would I be okay with letting that go? I'm probably not at this point in my life going to start all over again and become an oceanographer. Probably not. Okay, I can let that go. And so I think of this, at the end of the funnel, there's like a little strip. And you pick out the, 5 or 6, I wouldn't go too much over 6, but the 5 or 6 things that really kind of speak to you in some way. And I put them down the center, those 5 or 6 things. And they can be completely disparate things. They might have nothing to do with each other. We're just exploring. And so we put those 5 or 6 things down. And we sit with it. Just sit with it for a little bit, right? Are these the 5 or 6 things? You might move some things in and out and go, okay, I like that. That's a good list. Now the other side is the funnel that focuses, right? This is the less than sign. Oh, I guess this is the anyway, it doesn't matter. So this is the funnel that focuses. So you get the idea. You're going to end up with a diamond, right? So in the middle is this strip where you've put your 5 or 6 things. Now you're going to give yourself time. Again, a month, 3 months, even 6 months, you're going to give yourself time and you're going to explore each one of these ideas that you've written down. You're going to explore them and you're going to think, not in terms of can I do this, but you're going to explore it. What would be the end result? What might that be like? What kinds of things would I need to do to become that or experience that? I might need to move. I might need to go back to school. I might need to change my career. I might need to re-examine my finances. I might need to make some different decisions. Could be all kinds of things, right? And so we begin to explore them. So basically you put all 5 of them into this side now of your funnel, and you take them and you start exploring them. And you will begin to discover that there are some that you can pretty easily cross off. Yeah, that's that's a lovely, it's a lovely thought, but the truth is, whatever that takes, I don't want to do that process. I'm not really interested in it. I'm not sure that I like where it will take me. No, or just not now. Yeah, not right now. This doesn't feel like the place that my life is right now. And so you begin crossing it off, and you begin noticing that you're focusing what it is that you want, your desire, you're beginning to focus it. And you might end up with 1, very obvious one. You might end up with 2. And then at that point, you choose. You say, well, I'm just going to work on this one now. I'm going to spend my time on this one. Because I realize, that is something actually I want to express or experience or do. Now, here's the reality of it. The divine plan, there's only one divine plan. The divine plan is of freedom. You are free to choose anything you really want or desire, truthfully, as long as it hurts no one. You are free to choose it. And so if you decide to go back to school or change your career, the universe has no opinion about that. It will support you whichever one you decide to do. And you will learn and grow whichever one you decide to do. You will become more of yourself, whichever one you decide to do. It's just the one that you choose at that point. Or one may really leap off the page as very obvious. Now you can do this with small things like, what kind of car do I want to buy? Where do I want to live? What kind of home do I want to live in? You can do it for small material things, or you can do it for very large, life-changing things, or anything in between. It is an extraordinary process. I guarantee you at the end, you will have some sense of what you want. And it is so important for us to realize that it is what we want, not what somebody wants for us, not what we think other people want from us, not what we think we should do, but really what it is that we want. Now, we may have to work for it, or what we want. Not just may, we will. We will, once we've identified that, we will then begin the process of building the mental equivalent, beginning to imagine what it looks like, what the end result looks like, being in process with all of that, and allowing it to unfold. That's then the start of that. But the question, what do I want? Man, it's so important. And 90% of it, really, 90% of it easily is completely up to you. The only 10% that might be the case is, let's say we have children that we have to consider, or something might be harmful to somebody else. But otherwise, it is up to us to make that choice. And what a freedom, what a blessing that we can actually do that. So I hope that helps. It's a great process to work through. I work with this with a lot of people that I coach. So try it and see what happens. All right, Ryan.
Okay, great. Yes, I love those types of questions. And once again, this is time for you to share your thoughts or your questions with us, either in the chat, or you can raise your hand, or you can always leave it in the Facebook Live comments. So the next person I'm going to call up, Brenda. Do you want to go ahead and unmute yourself, Brenda?
Hi, Brenda.
Good morning, Dr. Petra and community. Wow, I love your answer to that last question because it really helped me phrase this next one.
Great.
I've had this last week or two to do some deep reflection on just how profound my life has changed in under 3 years since I first walked into the doors, and how you have helped me change that focus to create some of the spiritual, emotional, relational dreams that I never had believed I would happen, and they're spinning into existence now.
Yay.
And two things happened this week that have rattled me a little bit, so I'm hoping you can help me. Number one, in the midst of this great goodness of blessings just falling upon me, that little voice from that wee little girl came up. This has become so good, so wonderfully awesome, more than I ever dreamed. When is it going to be snatched away? Mm-hmm. And I know that that's the old distorted thinking, and in my mind I have that vision of where I'm going, and holding both of those at the same time, there feels like there's more I need to do for that reconciliation. And so that's part one of my question of letting go of that residual shreds of that disbelief. The second part of this question, I have been, with the guidance and help of so many in this community, been able to shift that belief about having joy, about having relationship, about having some stability in my life. But what I've had challenge shifting is letting go of both the family script and what my science of our world has told me about myself and what I've spent 30 years studying, and letting go of the limitations of my health.
Yep.
And reclaiming that wholeness of the physical being to enjoy all these other blessings that are just showering upon me.
Beautiful. Yeah, thanks, Brenda. Great questions. So let's start with the first question. So I heard you use the word reconciliation between your enjoyment of your good and the voice of your child, your little child that's waiting for it to be snatched away. So I'm going to suggest that you don't need to reconcile them because one is false and one is true. So we wouldn't necessarily reconcile false and true. What we would do is name them and to recognize that one is false and one is true. And the truth is, all the work that you're doing is manifesting in all of these different ways. The false is the old belief. It's simply false. And the reason she keeps popping up is for one reason only. It's habitual. It's a habitual way of thinking and responding. And it doesn't need to be reconciled. It's actually programming that needs to be rewritten. Thank God we learned from neuroscience about our neuroplasticity. And so that belief is one of those deeply held grooves in our brain. Literally, the synapses in our brain have learned to fire in that direction. And of course, we know that when that thought gets triggered, it cascades a whole boatload of chemicals into our body, which creates an emotional reaction, a physical and emotional reaction, that we might not even realize that thought has been triggered. And all we feel is the emotion, and we think, oh my God, I'm feeling this feeling, it must be real. No, the feeling is no more, it's a real feeling, but it's not based on truth. And so the feeling itself is false. So, I always identified this feeling as when is the other shoe going to drop? Right? From my childhood, traumatic childhood, when is the other shoe going to drop? And so this is where we pull out our affirmations, we do a fear to faith, we pull out our releasing prayer, and we deliberately rewrite that programming. So when the feeling or the fear or the thought, when is this all going to be snatched away? We basically have to become our own coach and say, why would it be snatched away? Why would Spirit snatch this away from us when all Spirit wants to do is express as us, fully and completely? This thought is based on old trauma and childhood experiences, and it is not my truth. It's not my truth. And so in the science of mind, we call this the universal no. We call it the denial that this thought has spiritual truth to it. It doesn't mean that you're not thinking it, and it doesn't mean that you're not feeling the feelings. It just says that there's no spiritual truth to this thought. So we're actually going to undermine the thought with spiritual truth. We don't have to be belligerent about it. We don't have to be mad. We're not mad at our little girl. We're not mad at any of those things. We are speaking spiritual truth. And I can remember very clearly at one point having a huge experience where I took that little girl and I put her on my lap, literally sitting in my rocking chair. I put her on my lap and I said to her, I know you are afraid, but you don't have to be in charge of my life anymore. I'm in charge of my life. The I that I am, the spiritual reality of who I am, I'm in charge of my life anymore, so you don't have to worry about whether the other shoe is going to drop. You no longer have to worry about that because I'm in charge now. So you get to play. That's all you need to do, to play. And I'm going to keep you safe so you can play because I'm in charge now. You don't need to protect me. You don't need to do anything but play. That was such a monumental experience. Of course, I cried my eyes out for probably 2 hours. And I've never looked back from that experience. Oh, occasionally that old tape has played. I have a beautiful releasing prayer from a Fear to Faith worksheet. If you've never done a Fear to Faith, call a practitioner. It's extraordinary. You get a releasing prayer. I have a beautiful releasing prayer that I worked with for years. And even still, every once in a while, I get that knot in my stomach. And I realize that I'm making up the idea that something bad is about to happen. I have absolutely no evidence for it, but I can feel it in the pit of my stomach. Something bad is about to happen. And in that moment, what do? I grab that releasing prayer. I grab that affirmation again. That's basically what it is. It's a series of affirmations. I grab it again, and I keep working with continuing to rewrite that program. This is the work that we do. And so again, it's not that the psychological work of looking at our child and our teenager and all those things aren't valuable, but when we get to the spiritual work, we're actually doing something different. And then to your second question, right, the question again is always, so what I would suggest, Brenda, is can you be whole in spite of any physical limitation? Right? How do we experience our wholeness in spite of a physical limitation or a physical change? Right? Because our wholeness is actually not about our physicality. And to experience as much joy and as much good as we possibly can, despite our physical limitation, will begin to expand our ability to experience joy. And we will discover that our physical limitation actually has nothing to do with it. So I'm going to just invite you to play with that a little bit and see what happens. All right, Ryan, last comment or thought?
Well, we do have a lot of questions, and,
okay.
and I'm cognitive of that, but here I think is a great opportunity for us to come together to do a spiritual mind treatment around this.
Okay.
As a great way to close us out for today. So would you be willing to do that exercise for us, Dr. Peter?
We can do a spiritual mind treatment it would help me understand what the spiritual mind treatment would be about.
Our spiritual mind treatment would be about to recognize the wholeness within our life.
Ah, okay. All right. And if your question isn't answered, please do bring it with us next week. Maybe we can capture some of them, Ryan, and maybe we can start out with them next week.
Or you can also contact one of our practitioners later today, and I'll put that link in the description so you guys can work with our practitioners to be able to bring this to manifest in your life.
Yeah, and they're great spiritual coaches. Take your spiritual questions. How do I do this? What does this mean? How should I move forward? They don't just do spiritual mind treatment. They do powerful coaching and can coach with you over time, not just in, a particular moment. All right, let's close with this spiritual mind treatment about our wholeness. So just taking a moment, let's just breathe in the spiritual truth that there is a life, one infinite power and presence, one love, one truth. It is the very heartbeat of the universe itself. It is the impulse of life seeking to express itself, whether it's expressing itself in the galaxies or in the hummingbird or in a baby's smile. All of that is the expression of the one life, the one love, and it's governed by a wisdom and an intelligence that knows how to do all of that, how to become all of creation, how to take the impulse of life and express it in the space-time continuum, in physicality, in all of the experiences of life itself. And the truth is, each one of us is a place where that life is awakening to itself, where that life is becoming individualized, showing up as each one of us, as each human being, as all beings everywhere. And in this moment of self-awareness, in this recognition and understanding that this is the truth of my being and the truth of the being of each of us, I recognize that I and every one of us is sourced from that infinite life. That infinite life. It is the truth of my being. It is the truth of the being of each of us. And yet, just as I look out in nature and I see that in every acorn, there is the impulse of life to become an oak tree. In every kernel of corn, there is the impulse of life to become a corn plant. The moment that that impulse sprouts and begins to grow, it is unique, individualized. I look out at my garden and I notice that there are beautiful giant red amaryllis and small, shy little pansies in the same garden. And yet each of them express life, fully express life as the very flower that they have come here to be. So what I know to be true is that that life is wholly and completely expressed through each and every one of us, regardless of the physical form, whether we are sequoia trees or violets. Whether we've been struck by lightning and only half of us is actually green, or whether we're a whole field of flowers. The truth is, life itself is whole, perfect, and complete, and expressing itself fully and completely as me and as each of us. Life cannot be limited, life cannot be contained, life cannot be in any way, shape, or form cut off from that expression. And so I affirm and declare that whether I'm a violet or a sequoia tree, whether you are a violet or a sequoia tree, each one of us is the perfect expression of life, whole, perfect, and complete as that reality. And that the very physical being that we are is present to that expression. That nothing about our physical being can limit life, can limit joy, can limit love. Nothing about our physical being can limit the truth of who we are and that expression or experience. And so I celebrate. I celebrate my sequoia tree-ness or my violetness. I celebrate whether my physical form is whole, perfect, and complete, or whether it's not. Because the truth is, life as me, as each one of us, is already whole. And it is wholly expressing as us. And so I release any belief in limitation. I release any belief in less than. I release any belief in not enoughness. I release any belief that stands in the way of this experience of life. And I am grateful for each and every moment in which I am present to the life that I live. I'm grateful for each and every moment that each one of us is present to the fullness of life that is living as us, right here, right now, and all of the good and the love and the joy that is pouring out because of it. So how good it is to know that we are already whole, regardless of any physical limitation. We are already whole. This is the truth of the life that lives as each one of us. With deep and profound gratitude, I know that this is absolutely simply announcing truth, and that truth must reveal itself as life unfolds. I call it good and blessed. I let it be, and so it is. Thanks, Ryan, for the suggestion. Look forward to seeing you next week. Look forward to seeing you in services in a little bit in our celebration, and we'll see you where we see you online. Bye for now.